You know, supporting this president has got to be really difficult sometimes. If you're an ardent supporter of his, it's just got to be a series of ups and downs and U-turns. I understand. One day you're for tariffs and you argue strongly in their favor. The next day he cancels them, so you have to turn around and turn on a dime and start arguing against them. So the question is, what will MAGA do now? Will they continue to defend tariffs, or will they say they've done their job? And the tariffs, will they say the tariffs have done their jobs and that we've had a victory, a great victory over our foreign enemies, all of our former friends, and now we don't need them anymore? Is that what they're going to say? I don't know. Let's find out, or let's try to find out. Happy Liberation Day. Remember that? The president, with great fanfare, declared it to be one of the greatest days in all of American history. It was the day that was going to save America, and America was going to be saved by tariffs, or what we should all be calling import taxes. Let's just call them what they are. People don't understand. They hear the word tariffs and they think, I don't know what that is. I never had a tariff. They're taxes, so let's call them taxes. They're taxes on imported goods, so let's call them import taxes. That'll be just a reminder to the MAGA crowd of exactly what we're talking about here. They're the people who've always advocated for lower taxes. So maybe if they find out tariffs are taxes, they won't like them so much anymore. Ooh, well, I can dream, right? Anyway, remember how the president introduced Capitulation Day? Sorry, I mean Liberation Day. He said it was going to be the biggest, most important event in all of U.S. history. He literally said that. Let's take a look at what he said here. Hold on a second. Here we go.
This is one of the most important days, in my opinion, American history. It's our declaration of economic independence. My fellow Americans, this is Liberation Day. April 2nd, 2025 will forever be remembered as the day American industry was reborn, the day America's destiny was reclaimed, and the day that we began to make America wealthy again.
Guys, this is what a dictatorship looks like. This is nothing but an authoritarian propaganda piece. The music, the drama. Who wrote this music? I mean, that was a miracle is going to happen any moment now. The drama, the sense of a great victory just won. He's literally trying to make it sound as important as the day the United States declared its independence from England in 1776. That's exactly what dictators do. That's how they act. You know, dictators are usually very insecure men, and insecure men love to brag about how important and how big the things are they're doing. They love to brag about success even before it happens. In fact, they usually have to do it before it happens because in the end, they don't have any real success. I mean, listen to this guy. He literally said, this day will be remembered forever. April 2nd, 2025. Seriously? I doubt it'll be remembered in 6 months. And in just another month, I don't think anyone will even remember the exact date. Who's going to remember April 2nd next month? He pompously called it Liberation Day as if he had freed us from some tyrant. Iraqis would be justified in this kind of tone the day Saddam Hussein was killed. Now, that was something worth celebrating. But this imposition of tariffs for 42 days before they were rescinded, and that's going to be the day we're going to remember forever? Are you kidding? Like, seriously? Even when we didn't get a darn thing for it? I call him President Don Quixote for a reason, because he's chasing windmills. Reality is whatever he imagines it to be in his own mind. And he's completely detached from earthly reality. Remember he said the tariffs or the import taxes, don't even call them import duties because people don't understand what a duty is. They don't understand that's a tax as well. Just call it clear and plain import taxes. But remember when he said the import taxes were going to raise so much money, he was going to give everybody a tax break? They even suggested that people would no longer have to pay taxes because the new import taxes would raise so much money. But he only kept them in place for 42 days. How is that long enough to pay our taxes? I mean, if he had really meant what he said, when he said it would pay our taxes, he would never have lifted the tariffs. Sorry, the import taxes. I mean, he never would have lifted them. So he never means anything he says. That's what you got to understand. If you're one of his big supporters, you got to understand he literally doesn't mean it. He says whatever sounds good to him at the moment. What he says has no tether to reality, and it's not going to last any longer until the breeze blows a different direction. Literally a few minutes later, he's going to change his mind. But you get all this bravado in this video and all this bluster and all this bragging, and it comes to absolutely nothing. It was an absolute waste of time, and it caused havoc for businesses across the nation and around the world. It caused undue stress for investors across the nation. And what did we get in return for it? Really, I'm asking, what did we get? Absolutely nothing. We got nothing in return for it. Hey, you're MAGA and you're listening to me and you're like, hey, this guy's an idiot. So go ahead and tell me, what did we get for it? Oh, I know. You're going to say, oh, well, we brought China, the import taxes brought China to the table. Well, big deal. What do we get for that? What did we get by bringing them to the table? We lowered our tariffs from 145% to 30%. I mean, that's 30% more than they were 3 months ago. So we're all still going to be paying more. We're going to be paying prices higher than Americans are going to be willing to put up with. I mean, everybody's talking like there was some great victory that we brought tariffs down by this huge amount. But who caused the tariffs in the first place? We did. It would be like Russians. It would be like Putin pulling out of Ukraine and then declaring a great victory at home that the war ended. The war he started and the war he could have ended at any time by pulling everybody out, by pulling his troops out and just by ending the war. And isn't that what we did? We launched this financial attack on the world, mostly on China, and then we rescinded it 42 days later. And now we're declaring a great victory? Like, oh, we brought China to the table. Now we got a great victory. Like, no more tariffs. I mean, come on. I mean, and we still haven't brought them down to what they were before Trump became president. They're still at least 30% higher than they were 3 months ago. It's insane, all this stuff. It's just insane. And but how are his supporters responding to this? That's what I want to know. I really want to know how they're going to respond. Here are some comments I read on a video last week from his most ardent supporters on my social media. And this is what they were talking about a week ago. They were bragging about tariffs. They were saying they were going to be great. They were loving them. But when I checked their feeds yesterday and today, I couldn't find them saying anything about this. Big U-turn, and they're silent. So let's just take a look for a quick review. Here's what they said last week. Deb said tariff revenue just smashed records, 15.9 billion collected in April. And I just saw the latest figures. It's like 16 point something now. So yeah, they collected about $16 billion in tariffs, which is a tax hike on us. We paid that. China didn't pay that. We paid that. But she was deliriously happy last week that we had collected all this money in April. What did she say today or yesterday? Nothing. I checked her feed. She's one of these people who post like 20 times a day, all pro-MAGA stuff, pro-Trump, pro-QAnon, pro every wacky lunatic theory out there. She's on it within minutes. I mean, this is what she does all day long, sits around and posts these things. So you would think she would post something about his U-turn. Nothing, not a word. And let's take a look at the next one. All right, so Deb, the same person, in another post last week, she said we are in uncharted territory. Stand behind the president or cut bait. Well, I guess he's going to now have to cut bait. She said, I stand with Trump. American sovereignty, no matter the cost, is what I'm standing with. So no matter the cost, no matter how high prices became, she was willing to put up with it, to stand behind her man. Now her man has made a U-turn. So what is she going to do? So far, she's been silent. I guess she hasn't gotten word from the MAGA grapevine yet about what their rationale and justification for all this should be. So Anne said the tariffs. Oh yeah. So this is what I predict will be a typical response. She said this last week before he rescinded them the other day. She said the tariffs are getting other countries to the negotiating table. If they result in more revenue for us short term, that's a bonus. So she's okay with them being canceled. She will credit the tariffs for getting China to the table. And in fact, they did get China to the table, but they got China to the table to do what? To rescind what we just instituted 42 days ago. We could have rescinded that on our own. We didn't even need them to come to the table. What these people are going to miss, here's what they're going to miss. They are going to miss the fact that we got nothing for this. We got nothing in return. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. And they're going to miss that. They're going to say, well, we got them to the table. When they say that, if you're talking to these people, ask them, okay, so what did we get? After we got them to the table, what did we get? Well, China agreed to lower their tariffs if we lowered ours. Okay. So we could have lowered them unilaterally, and they would have lowered them. We didn't even need to go to the table to negotiate that, did we? I thought we were supposed to negotiate, like, get them to stop cheating and stop stealing from us and all that, or stop sending fentanyl over to our shores. But nothing, nothing. Anyway, Carmen, this was one last week I kind of laughed at. She, yeah, she said last week, she said, winning, we're winning. Tariffs bring $70 billion total. No other prez brought in this kind of money. Libs just spend, spend, spend. As billions of dollars pour in from tariffs, we're only in a transition stage, just getting started. Trump said, excerpt, President Trump's tariffs became very real for importers last month as the government collected more than $17.4 billion in customs and certain excise taxes during April. The amounts are all over the place. The official figure that just came out today was around 16 point something billion. So another person earlier said a lower amount, and now she's saying a higher amount. I don't know where they're getting the 70 billion from. That's like totally out of the air, I think. And she brags down here that, down here, that was nearly double. The 17 billion was nearly double March's haul of 9.6 billion. It was actually 8 point something, dwarfing the smaller spikes in revenue seen during Trump's first term. All told, the duties have deposited more than $70 billion into government coffers since January 1st. That's a little bit off. All our numbers are a little bit off, but not too bad. But she was really happy we're bringing in this money. How's she going to feel now that we're not bringing in the money anymore? Is she going to be depressed, or is she going to make excuses for it? Uh, pretty funny, right? So these people, they got some splaining to do, I'll tell you that. So we've gone from Liberation Day to Capitulation Day. And I have to say, Capitulation Day feels a lot better. Sure does. Trump is literally the capitulating president. You know, he has a backbone of mush. He stands up to nobody. He doesn't stand up to Putin. He doesn't stand up to China. Nobody. And, it's funny. He presents himself as this big, strong guy who nobody can take on and who's fearless, but he's the exact opposite. That's why I call him our fearful leader. Anyway, I'm curious what you think they're going to say. These people who were defending these tariffs for the last 42 days, they were dug their heels in. They were really on board with this whole thing. What do you think they're going to say? How do you think they're going to explain this? How are they going to explain why they're now happy that the tariffs have been lifted when before they were really excited that they had been imposed? And like I say, I think they're going to say, well, it brought China to the table. But the question is, and what did we get out of that? We went back closer to the status quo before Trump started throwing bombs into the financial system of the world. That's what we got. We got back to closer to what Biden was doing. Is that what they're happy about? Anyway, these people, they had talked themselves into believing that we were going to get rich off of tariffs because they were bringing in so much revenue, as you saw in those comments. And all that, now they got to turn on a dime and say that they're happy that there are no more tariffs and no more revenue from tariffs. Anyway, leave a comment. Let me know what you think. I'm genuinely curious. I really am. And thanks for watching. I appreciate it. And I'll see you next time. Take care.